Hello, friends, and welcome back to another action-packed episode of the NintenGems podcast, the Nintendo podcast where we dig deep on games both new and old. I am one half of today's co-host set, Brayden, and across from me, I have the ever-lovely
Connor.
Hi, Connor.
Hi, Brayden.
How you doing?
I am ever lovely. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Eager to talk about today's game.
Singular game.
Singular game. We decided this is a behemoth enough that, we shouldn't necessarily tie anything into it. And we don't really have any safety guards for this episode necessarily either. We don't feel it necessary to explain, what this game is. This episode may be a bit more conversational in our opinions. But without further ado, this episode we'll be discussing The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild for Nintendo Switch and Wii U.
Wii U. So let's just, we should start with the beginning. Wait, I don't know a thing about the Wii U port. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, I don't know anybody who played it on the Wii U.
We should probably pick it up. It's probably a collector's item, is it not?
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's worth a pretty penny at this point or something. All 5 copies of the Wii U port.
For real.
But that said, the majority of people did play this game for the Switch. This game was a console seller. It came out March 3rd, 2017, which as of this recording is over 4 years ago. Kind of wild considering the relevance that this game is also held. People are still playing this game.
Oh yeah.
Both people who are picking up their Switch for the first time today, getting a brand new Switch, they're okay, I need Breath of the Wild to go with this. Or people are still just toying with the game itself and
finding new ways to overcome different things within it.
Right.
And some of us are just replaying it for fun.
Yeah.
And especially with the recent Breath of the Wild 2 content sort of being teased, it's about time to kind of take stock of what we have in front of us so far.
Yes. Which again, kind of just to how I started off this conversation, we don't know exactly what we're going to be talking about here necessarily. There's not much that hasn't been said about this game at this point. It's just such a blockbuster, and everybody from, the freaking New York Times to your next door neighbor who streams on Twitch, has discussed this game. Right. And so
even in a way, beyond, I don't know, we have an episode on Ocarina of Time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, there's something to be, it's still just so contemporary and still, it's already a modern classic.
Yes.
But it is still so contemporary and relevant. There's a sequel on the way. It is hard to present anything new about it in a different way than something solid gold, ancient, Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, yeah.
In an interesting way.
For sure. Know.
But you've played it more recently than I have. I'm going to throw you under the bus a little bit for a conversation initiation. This was it was sort of your idea.
Yeah.
Am I being too...
No, I'll take
it. With that?
I'll take the crap you're shoving my way.
All right.
But it's true. I felt compelled to play this game again recently, and I did. Not all the way through, mind you.
Fair. And to that degree, we've both played it through.
Oh, yes.
I played it through, twice before at this point.
Yeah.
2.5 times, actually.
Well, and
but not in a while.
Yeah. I wanted to mention that, though, as well. You did get a Switch before I did. Close to a full year before I did. And so you had played this game as well.
Is that?
Before I was able. Yes. I got my Switch for Christmas. I think you may have gotten yours for your birthday or something like that.
I got it at launch, baby.
I got mine at least the Christmas after launch.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I remember asking you about it, and
I vaguely remember this.
Yeah, and then
that's so sad.
I finally I think you might even agree I'm the Zelda guy out of the two of us.
Sure, yeah.
Which,
whatever.
You have played all these Zeldas, and I'm not saying I am more informed, but I might claim it a hair faster than you.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Those guys.
But
Zelda, but
yeah,
guys, there's all the guys.
Took me a long time to play. Took me a long time to get on board.
Yes,
and it felt weird.
But that is weird. I do remember you avoiding spoilers. That
Mhm.
does like you were like staying like off the internet
Yes.
like wholesale.
Yeah. But I did finally, obviously, get this game for the
Mhm.
Switch, skipped the Wii U, and dove right in and blitzed it like many others before me and after. It really brought the Legend of Zelda series into a whole new dimension, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And even in, I mean, but also kind of full circle was sort of the concept of the game too, was to
Uh-huh.
bring it back to like square one, day one of like the original Legend of Zelda, kind of plopped into a world with no real direction
Mm-hmm.
or a vague objective, but like a completely open world with no serious, evident restrictions. You know,
Yeah.
just like a big open world to experiment in, and like whatever you figure out, you figure out.
Which, for some, struck very naturally and was welcome, and for some, it threw them off guard and it
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel like Zelda. And I think both are valid and have points.
That is the precipice that this game sits on, I feel
Mm-hmm.
like, and has for a time, like nearing the end of playing it for the first, back when I was finishing it for the first time. I mean, that's kind of like where I stood on it, even originally. Like, I feel like the
Yeah.
conversation shifted once the sequel was announced, that it's like, well, what could they improve? What
Right.
needs improving? What is like, for me internally, and like whenever I talk about this game with anybody, is like, especially other Zelda fans, is like, what about this game actually wasn't right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what went wrong? What was like not fun? And what
Mm-hmm.
was just like not what we're used to with Zelda?
Right.
Because I feel
Right.
like those get conflated really easily.
Mm-hmm.
Not to jump too far ahead in like the conversation, but I mean like the dungeons, like
Mm-hmm.
in most traditional Zelda games, there's like a set of eight or so themed dungeons that are cohesive and
Right.
thematic and have like a
Ordered.
order. Yeah, and they have like that's just kind of a Zelda staple. It feels right, but
Mm-hmm.
this game obviously did something different. This game has 120 scattered shrines with like their own individual puzzles, and then the four
Yeah.
divine beasts, which are kind of mini dungeons. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like if
Mm-hmm.
this game in a vacuum, this if this were the first Zelda game, like that's just how it is, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it just feels something. It doesn't feel right because we have this precedent set,
Mm-hmm.
and I do wonder. Like again, the discussion is just interesting. Like before there was a sequel announced for this, it was kind of like, I mean, this is the game and this is how it is.
Yeah.
But now there's this opportunity to improve or change something
Yeah.
on the horizon. And it's like, well, does it need improving? Is it bad? Is it wrong? Or do we just like
Mm-hmm.
want something that we're more used to?
Right.
And I guess by that token, like, what do we think we're gonna do? What,
Yeah.
like, I don't know. It's
Well,
interesting
just to back up a split second.
for sure.
I
Yeah,
don't
I
think
jumped ahead too quickly.
Yeah, but I don't think I've ever heard this game called a bad game.
But
You know
of
what I mean?
course,
And if anything, I've only heard it called a good game.
you'd be hard pressed to call it a bad game.
Yeah. It's incredible. It is just you can apply this as literally as you want. But I mean, it is a masterpiece of sorts.
For
You know
certain.
what I mean?
I think one of the most genuine criticisms you could levy against it is like taking away the comparison to previous Zelda games is the comparison to contemporary open world games.
Mm-hmm.
Because like there's like this Ubisoft template of like you get to the radio towers and it shows
Yes.
you everything in the map.
The Far Cry model.
Exactly. Which I've had friends compare it to and been like, this is
Mm-hmm.
just like any other open world game. But there's like this Nintendo polish and this organic feel to it that's like,
Yeah.
yes, they did do the Ubisoft radio tower thing, but it is still organic in that like it reveals this section of the map and there's the completionist sort of aspect of the map, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't just highlight all the icons on the map for you,
Right.
like
Right.
Ubisoft games do.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't show you where all the enemies are and all the treasure is. You still have to find that yourself.
Yes.
And that's that Nintendo polish. I feel
Mhm.
like that like organic game design that is still at play. And that's again still jumping a little too far ahead in the
Yeah.
discussion, but I mean, it's just like broad discussions of like, is it a good game or a bad game? Is it a classic? Is it a masterpiece? Is it still to be determined in the wake of a sequel. Like I feel like it's like you just kind of already have to like nickel and dime it a little bit.
Yeah.
Like there's just it's such a complex game. It sits in such an interesting place in both the Zelda canon, the Zelda series, and in just like gaming at large. Like what I don't know what makes it a masterpiece compared to other open world games, let alone Zelda games.
In reviews and even personally, I see this as both a positive and a negative, but Nintendo did not shy away from the expansiveness of the map as a whole and the willingness to like kind of leave it bare and empty. I don't know. I really, as much as I simultaneously dread like having to traverse this huge, massive plain by foot, at the same time, the fact that it's all there and like not necessarily realistic, but you know what I mean?
I would say this is like a symptom of Nintendo polished game design too. Is like it's organic, but it is also like everything's there for a reason. It's a big map, and there's like 120 shrines scattered across the whole thing. Like even though there's like expanses of emptiness, there's something to be uncovered everywhere. Whether it's just like an in-game resource or a little enemy camp,
a Korok seed.
Yeah. Oh, like, oh my god, the Korok seeds. Like there's almost 1,000 of those. Like yeah. Like there are large understood expanses of like quote unquote emptinesses, but that's still like. You can tell that is still on purpose. That's by design, and it still feels like even separate from game design, like within the game world, it still feels like organic and plausible.
Yes,
like that's just like this weird like abstract understanding of the game world. That's like I don't know. It's different than like Just Cause or Far Cry or Assassin's Creed. Like those are also all like immaculate. Designed and detailed worlds, but there's just something that's different about Breath of the Wild that's just like really hard to pin down.
Yeah, it feels bad to just shoehorn it to Nintendo polish. Like,
I don't know,
there are more words to be used to describe this.
Sure, but I mean
maybe
that
we'll find them.
Right. I mean that would require more like nickeling and diming and like case by case. Like this shrine is here for this reason.
Yeah.
Go through all of them, you know. But I mean that's evident in like. In a recent recording session, I joked about Breath of the Wild 2 being delayed. But, like, do you remember the initial teaser trailer for Breath of the Wild? Way, way, way back.
Yeah, vaguely.
E3 2014. Now, the Wii U had just come out.
Wow.
The Wii U is still new and still like establishing itself as like a please buy this console.
Yeah.
And this game, this new Zelda game, still not even called Breath of the Wild, was exclusive to the Wii U. It was a Wii U game.
It was going to sell Wii U's.
It was going to be the Wii U's Zelda game. And now, of course, 2021, the Wii U didn't have its own Zelda game.
No.
It did not. And at the end of that E3 2014 trailer, it said 2015.
Oh my gosh!
And tell us, Braden, when Breath of the Wild came out.
That's a March 3rd, 2017.
That is 2017. So all that to say, my point was it like this abstract concept of Nintendo polish. That's like such a game design theory like. Discussion like
phenomena.
It's like you could capture it all in like a college course if you wanted, but like it's hard to nail down. But like I mean, if anything, it's just evident in like the development time.
Yeah,
because it got delayed so much, and that's no mystery or that's not uncommon for Zelda games. I mean, you remember, like, I remember us reading Nintendo Power back in the day about Twilight Princess.
Oh my gosh, yes, years. Same with Wind Waker. I had that pre-ordered, and I got the I remember there was a pre-order bonus for, like, it was the Legend of Zelda Collector's Edition. Like, you got that for pre-ordering Wind Waker. And, but I got that, like, months and months before Wind Waker came out.
Right, yeah. I mean, retrospect, do you think it was, like, a consolation?
I think it could be. Like, yeah.
I don't know. And, like, it's interesting because even in Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, you can still tell where there was, like, cut content or, like, where measures were taken or corners were cut.
Yeah.
But Breath of the Wild, it's really, like, it really feels like every minute they took of development time was fully fleshed out. Like it doesn't feel like anything is missing.
Very few loose ends.
Yeah. If any, and if there are, it feels like it's by design.
Yeah.
Like there are some things that are like a little bare, like the story's a little disconnected, I think.
Yeah.
Generally in how it's presented. But again, I think that's in how it's presented. I think it's kind of by design.
Intentional.
And the design necessarily doesn't just hold up in execution.
Well,
I don't know.
It's that's a good mention of the story, because we haven't mentioned that yet. And that does really lead into my truest, most base level feelings of this game. And I hate to say it, like I don't even know if I mean it through and through, but I am one of the pricks who's like, this is an amazing game, but it doesn't feel like a Zelda game. You know?
Yeah,
and
I'm sure, whatever, like, you know, whatever that means.
But I mean, I really do think it leads back to the lack of story. Like, you know what I mean? What makes a Zelda game so much is like the involvement of Princess Zelda and all the heroics along the way, and the characters, and the fact that it is a legend, kind of. There's lore, you know what I mean? And this one, it feels very isolated. The Breath of the Wild, though it actually claimed to connect the rest of the Zelda series,
right? Or like be, I guess
the missing link of sorts.
Sure,
missing link,
as it were.
But it still feels the most disconnected to me. It doesn't rely on the nature of the characters. There's very little characterization. There's very little storyline other than 100 years ago things happened.
And yet, this is the first Zelda game that we have with voice acting.
Yeah, which bizarre directorial choice.
Very bizarre.
Because I'm confident they are aware of the lack of story. You know what I mean? And I think that's something that they will likely remedy in the sequel. You know what I mean? I think they will lean into the characters more. And perhaps even the circumstances. You know what I mean?
I think it feels like a directorial problem. As far as like, not even just like the acting goes, but like as far as like the game design goes. Like this doesn't feel like something that like something was left on the cutting room floor. It feels like this is like incidental by design of like the open nature of the game, to benefit the open-ended nature of like the game itself, which is one of the game's major strengths.
Yeah.
Is the story kind of had to take a back seat. Which certainly is ironic with like this enhanced semi-emphasis on the nature of the story and like the execution of the story, with like these like cinematic cutscenes and this voice acting, and Link is a character named Link now.
Yeah.
Do you remember the 2017 teaser trailer that came out right before the game? The hypest shit ever. So cool.
It's less clear to me, but
it was awesome. It was mostly story stuff. Like I remember like the E3 like 2016, I think, or 2015, like was like all like, look at this huge open world. But the 2017 trailer, like right before the launch of the Switch and Breath of the Wild, was like, this is story. And it, like, so good. Like here's music nerd again. The score for the I think we've talked about this, not on the show, but the score, the song for this trailer made it into Super Smash Bros. as an arranged track for the Breath of the Wild stage.
But it was never used again.
It was never used in the game whatsoever. It's just that good. It's that hype. It's that awesome. It's that good of like a trailer, and that good of like an arrangement of the theme that it was used in Smash, but is missing from the game and from other media, other material, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
All that to say is that certainly there is this curious emphasis on plot and storytelling, even though like in execution within the game, I don't know. Again, I think it's a directorial design choice that the story is told the way it is. But I do think that it is a negative point that like I don't know, the voice acting isn't great,
Yeah.
and like the script is like pretty lackluster. Like I think those are like faults.
But right, just to dig in, like the champions, they
Mm.
are such two-dimensional characters that like,
Right,
how are we supposed to be invested in them at all?
right.
Like, there's just no motivation for me behind the game.
And everything cool that you saw of the champions
Mm-hmm.
was in that trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's all. Like you
They're
like
not in the game.
barely. Yeah. Again, this is also a discussion about like post Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity.
Yeah.
Let's be more fair.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't, and that's something that I've yet to play. TBH,
Mhm.
sorry audience, but you have insight on.
Yeah, I loved Age of Calamity for its story beats. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? You really did actually finally get to know these characters that you just heard stories about in
Mhm.
Breath of the Wild. Like, oh yeah, they died 100 years ago, but they sure were cool. You'd love to meet them. Like,
mean,
I
yeah.
bet I would.
Well, and then there's like this other weird missing link that you meet their kids
yeah,
or
like,
whatever,
they're successors. Yeah,
right? Which gets some characterization. You help them through some.
Yeah,
It is still relatively underwhelming
Mhm.
in its execution, but I don't know. It's still, again, personally to me, my interpretation, it feels like a directorial thing.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like something like, again, like the voice acting sucks and the script is not great, but like it was a sacrifice that is like tangible because of the let's drop the player into a big open world to discover the story as they want
Yeah.
to. You don't have to even do the story. You know,
Mhm.
you can, if you want to play a Zelda game, if you want to play like Zelda 1 and
Yeah.
just like explore an open world and do whatever the hell you want, like you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's pretty bold and amazing.
Yeah.
That is still an option, even with all this plot stuff kind of like out there for you to get if you want.
Yeah. I can continue though. I do.
Sure.
I've found a thread, and that.
Oh,
But
yes.
but I'm going to begin this with like positives.
Mm.
In that, yes, they do drop you into this open world. I mean, it is the definition of a sandbox in
Yeah.
my mind. You know what I mean? Like they give you this power set, these skills, these metaphysical,
And
powers
these
to
tools,
play
they're
with.
tools.
Yeah.
Like the magnesis and like the bombs and
Precisely.
the ice stuff.
To make strange things happen, and like those are incredible. Like the functionality between using multiple of them at one time, using that in conjunction with a bomb. I don't know, just like the fact that they can align and work together is incredible. But like the only one of those things that we've seen before are bombs.
What do you mean?
They aren't Zelda fixtures that they have now made skills. They came up with random skills and threw them into Zelda.
Okay. This is like a broad game design stroke that I feel like this game could have done differently. It kind of would have changed the foundation of everything, but it would have made it feel more Zelda. What if you had unlocked?
That's all it takes. That's
right.
all it takes.
You
and I would
unlock each of those sequentially and or keep the world open, but unlock each of those like Sheikah Slate powers like in one of the divine beasts.
Yeah, the bomb is at the camel.
Sure.
Yes, Cryonis is at Mipha's.
And that would make each of the divine beasts feel more like a dungeon, feel more cohesive around a singular like gameplay concept, certainly. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, and again, this is just like another like you'd have to go through the game like piecemeal, like area by area, shrine by shrine, be like I think that you would have to like remap the entire game to be like, okay, you can't access this area without the Cryonis, without making ice platforms, right.
This temple is not finished, or this shrine is not
right
completable until
you could bookmark it and come back to it whenever you have that power.
Yeah.
You could be like, I don't know how to solve this. You can come back to it later, which is already a staple of the game.
Right.
That's
interesting. That doesn't sound like it would feel good to me to have to bookmark and come back, but it is already a feature, and I do feel like overall having them be unlockables rather than just like instantly unlocked would feel better for the game overall.
Sure. It's tricky to I just wish we could I wish there was like a dev diary that we could follow through obviously it was like 4 damn years in
Yeah.
development or whatever, like at least.
Mm-hmm.
So much has to have changed like through each like stage of delay even,
Right.
that like I don't know, it feels like it was simultaneously like a design choice that like, okay, we're going to start the player off with each of these new powers and
Mm-hmm.
teach them how to use them in an organic way.
Yeah.
Like they throw you a shrine to teach you how to use them
Mm-hmm.
all, and then after like the first 3 hours and you have all your things, then they're like, go play,
Right.
go
Uh-huh.
play. Like that's sure it might not feel like Zelda, but that's like premier open world game design. Like
Yeah.
give me a set of like Gary's mod tools and then tell
Uh,
me to go nuts and like discover whatever I want.
yeah,
Like come on now. That's awesome.
it is. And that speaks to the longevity of the game that we were referencing at the beginning of the episode. Like, the Breath of the Wild subreddit is booming, has hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and like it is constant. People are always finding new stupid things to do or try, or ways to beat the game, or even just like objects that move and then they just decide to drag them across the map because why not? You know what I mean? We like it is a sandbox that people are still uncovering new tricks and goof offs. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
unfortunately, like that's not my jam. I didn't need a Zelda sandbox. My favorite parts of the game were the more linear and structured parts, which is just me. And like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like that's
But that's the great divide. Like that's like
yeah.
that is what like it as universally lauded and praised as the game is, like that is kind of the great divide, is like there are Zelda fans that want it to be more Zelda-y, but its strengths are kind of in the ways that it's not a Zelda game.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
The
as a
new
game,
things that they did try.
yeah. I have a transition in from that into something else, but I do want to ask something that we haven't mentioned. What is your take on like the weapon degrading?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the easiest complaint to have, I feel like. And I do feel like it's a justified complaint. Like, it is not a perfect system. I do think it's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think it fits within the sandbox concept of the game. And I genuinely did not mind it as much as like I feel like most people did. I do think a lot of weapons like get destroyed pretty quickly. They could use a little bit more durability just to make an item feel more worthwhile,
Sure.
just to even grab. I did not feel the need to hate on the degrading weapons. What about you?
It annoyed me a lot.
Yeah. In a way that you thought it was like a bad decision?
I don't know. It's hard to say.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the reason I'm asking this now is because we just talked up all the different tools and stuff that like you have so much power at your disposal that goes beyond just like the average like weapon that you hold.
Right.
And there's so much, like you said, like it's a sandbox. Like you can cut down the trees, you can blow up the trees, you can make your own weapons from the environment in a split second if you really need to.
Yeah.
And even then, like the game is built around like if you are unequipped for an encounter, like you like book it, like get out of there. Like
yeah, right.
It's open enough, like you can get out of there if you want to, and like there are plenty of areas and spots and enemies where you could find yourself overpowered, like plausibly, and like that's like by design, I feel like.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. Is that a bad thing? Like, is it a bad thing to feel underpowered like that? To me, as an artist, I think art is qualified by the vision and the direction and the execution of the art and from the artist versus how that's perceived.
Right.
And, like, how well executed like the concept is.
Is where the true value is found.
Yeah, like how does the artist convey what they want to? And games as art, whatever. Like if that feeling is on purpose, then like, yeah, more power to them. But if it's like, I don't know, if it's on accident,
right?
I don't know. It's hard to evaluate. It's really hard to evaluate. I do think on a case by case basis, the weapons do degrade generally, broadly, too quickly.
It's funny. I I'm thinking now, and like the only situation that I can picture myself being unhappy with it is like finding myself without weapons. Like I don't think
Yeah.
you should ever be able to run out. Like the Master Sword should always deal 5 damage. You know what I mean? Like or something. Like you should. I feel like there should always be a default to fall back on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I am positive they wrestled with that concept before
Sure.
execution. You know what I mean? Like
I would hope so. I mean,
like finding yourself stuck without a weapon like doesn't seem in the Zelda spirit or something. Like or even sound fun. Like something fun to put a player through.
but that's when you look around your environment and you look for like the explosive barrels or the
Yeah.
boulders or the
That's
like,
where the creativity comes
yeah,
from.
absolutely. And then like I mean, that's the point of all the tools around you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's where the discussion just becomes so much about like the moment to moment, area to area design of like, sure, if you're caught in this one specific area, enemy camp in this like corner of the map with no weapons,
Mm-hmm.
can you get out? Can you come out successfully, or do you like do you have a chance? Like I don't know.
Right.
You'd really have to like analyze, like,
because Nintendo would say like, "Oh, the world is your oyster. Like you're
Right.
gonna be fine."
sure,
But like to the average player, and especially like the average Zelda player,
right,
it's like this feels impossible.
Right.
Like I don't have a sword.
yeah, I don't know. The transition that I was speaking of earlier, like for a sequel,
Mhm.
as a Zelda fan, what needs changing?
Right.
What is not good? Like, do you
Mm-hmm.
want weapon degradation to go away? Do you want it to be like a Metroid thing where we had like all these tools in the first game, but we lose them all at the beginning and we have to reclaim them for this
Mm-hmm.
sequel?
Right.
Do you want Zelda Stables back? Do you want a hook shot? Do you want like a boomerang? How is it gonna work? How do you
So
make a
funny.
sequel to a game like this?
Yeah.
I mean, we can start with what little we have to go on, I guess.
Right.
This
So
is-
I mean, we know the biggest change is going to be like 3-dimensional.
Right. There's some sort of verticality more at play.
Yes. Yes.
Which I mean, something we haven't really touched on. Like that's kind of something that is major about this game. That's different from like Assassin's Creed or Far Cry. Is like
Mm-hmm.
the verticality. Like you have the
Yes.
sailcloth.
Yes.
Like
you can fly, quote unquote.
yeah,
You can
more or less.
soar. I think is
You have a means of escape wherever you are.
yeah.
Like if you're stuck on a cliff, you're not stuck. You can sail down.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Like
mm-hmm.
that. Like I mean, I started looking at the real world differently. Like when I was in like
right.
the deep throes of being obsessed with Breath of the Wild, I was
Uh-huh.
like, you know, like there's so much world to explore if I could just like get down places, you know?
Right.
I mean, for a sequel, do you make a more directed experience? Like now that we've had like this open sandbox and like we've all had like this similar experience,
Uh-huh.
like however it is, like
Wrestling with, oh, do we like this? Do we not?
right. I mean, like, do you just buckle down and then like make like, yeah, this is now a Zelda game.
Mm-hmm.
You take all the elements that are like most Zelda-esque and like I don't know, is this going to be the Majora's Mask to Breath of the Wild Ocarina of Time?
Right. I do think that will end up being like an apt comparison when all things are said and done.
But what are you going to do when it's not? When you don't have something to compare it to? When it's a different kind of sequel?
Yeah.
It's not like your Zelda game that you're used to.
Mm-hmm. Fair. I don't know.
But continue your thought.
I think there's just like some reworkings that need to be done. I feel like the degradation weapon system will stick, but be reworked. The different weapons will actually feel different. I mean, obviously, like spears and swords felt different from one another and stuff.
Right.
Like, but something to break up the experience of the weapons a little bit, to shake it up. I think they'll still break, but less obnoxiously. I think there's going to be more story.
I don't know, man.
I
hope so.
I don't think it's going to be. I think it'll be a little more railroady.
But like, why? Why do you think that? Like, every thought is plausible. Like,
Right.
we have so little to go on, and there's
Mhm.
so much that could be like, quote unquote, improved on.
Mm-hmm.
Even now that we know that there is a sequel, and like the little 30 seconds of the sequel that we have seen, like, there's still like so much room for interpretation. Like, what do you
Right.
think?
I want a little more heart. This last one felt like an awesome machine to go toy around with. but it just felt cold. It kind of felt to me like it was the proof of concept, and now they can dress it up and give it a little more flavor and character and bring it home to Zelda. And kind of like how they have been playing up this Skyward Sword re-release, like so much they've been like, oh, this was the Breath of the Wild precursor. Look at the stamina bar. Look at the climb. Look at the sailcloth.
Whatever.
Like
F that.
But they have been saying that
they
stuff.
Like, just absolutely.
Just okay, good. Making sure you back.
No, you're absolutely right. But like,
I would like to think maybe a similar kind of trajectory can be carried over here. Just like this was another experimental, and we'll get some more solid
direction.
Perhaps, yes. Actually, just a more cohesive direction, if anything.
Now, I would ask you in that regard: would you say that there's a question with an intent, but a question within a vacuum, nonetheless?
Okay.
Would you say that Majora's Mask has a more cohesive vision than Ocarina of Time?
More cohesive vision
in like how it's executed?
No.
Which
screws up everything that I've been talking about.
No, not necessarily.
I realize that, but I do think Ocarina of Time has more. Intent and like.
I think there's a valid. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think there's valid rationale behind either answer, because I think Majora's Mask is an extremely cohesive world.
Yes, of course.
It's concise and tight and truly.
It literally is looped.
Yes, literally
endless.
Everything that is in that world is there for a reason. Ocarina of Time experienced a little bit of development hell, like most 3D Zeldas.
Yeah.
There's like some. Now that hindsight is 2020, and we're 30 years almost like beyond the point. I don't know. We can see where cut content was and what's missing.
Right.
Kind of like we can see where that is, and there's like older beta versions. But Majora's Mask didn't have that opportunity. It had like rushed development, and like everything that's in there is in there on purpose. But it was building off of Ocarina of Time, and it couldn't exist without Ocarina of Time. Can they strike gold twice with that kind of thinking, that kind of formula with a Breath of the Wild sequel? I don't know. I don't think anybody can predict what that can look like. Best case scenario.
Yeah.
And like for some people, best case scenario isn't a Majora's Mask. Like some people don't like Majora's Mask. Some people think it's a sloppy mess,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. My favorite game of all time, by the way.
Exactly.
In case you haven't heard it yet.
And I might like it on more than Ocarina myself. I don't know. I can only imagine that like historically conversations just like this happened after Ocarina of Time came out and Majora's Mask was announced. You know? Yeah. It's like, this is the perfect video game. This is Zelda in 3D, and it's a 10 out of 10. Like, I mean, people were saying that already.
Yeah. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah, well, what's next? And, like, Majora's Mask was a major departure. It only had 4 dungeons.
Yeah. Fair. Touché.
I don't know, man. It's so fun to talk about. But it's also so meaningless and silly to pontificate on, because we just have no idea.
Yeah. So I will say, in the grand question of what are they going to change for a sequel, what verticality was not either my first guess nor my first choice of
certainly,
like,
because verticality was already there.
Yeah,
it was already pretty effective.
Like
I think
floating islands aren't necessarily the fix that I would have come up with. I think at first maybe they had a great argument, and maybe it's going to be freaking awesome. I bet it will be. But I don't know. I feel bad doing this and building up so much hype, because I've tried to not. But I do feel confident they're going to patch some holes here. In a way that Majora's Mask did, you know what I mean? Just, I think they can really
close some gaps.
Tie this Breath of the Wild thing up neatly.
There was a boomerang in Ocarina of Time that was only available for the kid, and now they're for the adult. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just like something a little extra that is like not necessary. Yeah. Make it one item.
Yeah.
To completely fabricate and coin a term, concisement to be made purely design wise.
Concisions.
That's what I went to first, but I don't know if that sounds like worse to me.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. Breath of the Wild is immaculately designed as it is.
Yeah. In all the negativity that I've produced, like, I mean, it is a fun game. It's an incredibly beautiful game. I don't know if it's as fun as it is impressive. You know what I mean?
That is true.
Sometimes I think I'm playing it, I'm just like more in awe of it than I am like having a good time, which I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing.
That sounds like a good thing. I would say for me, like, I'm more like addicted to it than I am like
yeah.
Like in awe of it or like truly having fun with it. Because I feel like, I mean, but that feels more to me like a pitfall of like just open world game design is like it can never truly be over until like you're bored of it.
Right.
And Breath of the Wild can hit that point. Like the world scales around like, you know, your ability, like however many hearts or whatever you had, and it gets the hardest it's going to be. You find all the Lionels you're gonna find.
Yeah.
You end up just hunting for Korok seeds, and like
and then you get no reward for finding them all.
More or less, yeah.
Right.
I mean, you like it's just kind of it waits for you to get bored with it, which I don't know isn't invalid,
but feels like a very sandbox type thing
for certain
type ending,
but for better or for worse.
Yeah, this game is just
it's an enigma still.
Yeah. I do think the sequel will like nail some of these things down. You know what I mean?
Only hope.
But I think it'll nail at least like what Nintendo's intentions were down. Whatever they repeat in this sequel will be like, okay, that was on purpose. That was y'all had conversations about that.
But we can only hope what they repeat is refined too.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's differing conversations about that with the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask too. Is Majora's Mask a sidestep or an improvement? A refinement?
Right.
People to view it differently. How will we view Breath of the Wild too? Oh, also to bring it back home, like significantly home, Ocarina of Time is an item in the Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
Majora's Mask is like the central plot point of Majora's Mask. Wind Waker is
literally the tool.
Is the tool, the Wind Waker. Incidentally, like it seems like almost like an afterthought, like the way it's presented. Like that seems like a development thing.
Yeah.
Twilight Princess is like a kind of like a double entendre.
Yeah.
You know, it's Twilight Princess, but then it's actually it's Princess. Skyward Sword is like where they start to lose you a little bit.
Yeah.
Like it's the sword, you point it skyward, and like there's a lot of plot stuff that has to do with that. Sure, why not? It takes place in the sky. Sword in the sky. Sure.
You've thought about this. I like this.
I thought about this in so much because leading up to the release of Breath of the Wild, I'm rubbing my hands together in the microphone. What's the Breath of the Wild gonna be?
Right.
What does that mean? Ooh, I wonder how that's gonna play into everything. It doesn't.
How about no story to explain it?
But there's so much story. Like that's, I don't know. I feel like we didn't reach a conclusion with that conversation. We certainly don't have to. We're running out of time, and we're not gonna reach any sort of like.
There's no hard fast ending.
Yeah, there's no sort of satisfying conclusion. But like, there's so much story in this thing.
But they don't tell it.
They just do a weird job of telling it, but yes, to my own point to a conclusion. What the hell is the Breath of the Wild?
I don't know.
What and Wild share their survival elements, but like what? Doesn't have anything to do with Calamity Ganon or Divine Beasts or like the four heroes or Link being a champion or Zelda or King Hyrule. Like what the hell is a Breath of the Wild? Like, sure, like, you kind of get breath breathed into you at the beginning when you're in cryostasis and you wake up in your time chamber, but I don't know. What's the sequel going to be called?
That, you got me there.
Death of the Wild.
Ooh.
I don't know. Doesn't matter.
Blaze of the Wild.
Sure. Who cares?
You're right. I do.
Something relevant.
It feels true to the sprawling openness that we were referring to. Like,
yeah. But
like the breeze
of
the wild.
Like, yeah, okay. But what is it?
Didn't they reference that like in the very first trailer too? Am I wrong in that?
I think you might be wrong in that.
Okay.
Like maybe, but like then it's not in the game.
Yeah.
Like it sounds like such a minor thing, but pre-release, I was genuinely like what's because that's the mystery of it.
Yeah, what's the wild?
That's always the mystery of it. Like we don't know what the Twilight Princess is, but right. Skyward Sword, like yeah, it's the Master Sword, but what's it gonna do then? Like it's not anything.
True. That's a good one.
It's like even like a weird. It's not even like a direct metaphor. It's like not even like a solid like I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just. Like,
I'll give you that one.
That's my most nitpicky thing about the game, but I think it's pretty significant.
It's a fair gripe.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that because I feel silly ranting about it.
I never thought of it, and you didn't have me until like you explained it. But like, I do think it's like a fair gripe, actually.
I appreciate that. Let's hope it's not called Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah. I'm gonna remain positive with that too, optimistic, in that it'll be a super badass name and be incredibly relevant to the deep story that they're going to tell in that game.
Cohesively.
Yes, that was my optimism showing.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, all right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this short, sweet, choppy little discussion on Breath of the Wild. We've been meaning to get into it for a while, and heck, with the sequel coming out, this may not be the last we have, and obviously we're looking forward to the second one, so
2022.
TBD.
Here's hoping 2022.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
All appendages crossed.
Yeah. But anyway, thank you guys so much for sticking around. Please hit us up on our Discord if you have any thoughts about what we've said, whether you think we're idiots or maybe you think we're right. Who knows? Otherwise, you should follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, subscribe on the podcast platform that you're listening to right now, or YouTube, if that's it, because we're on YouTube. Check us out. Make sure you check out Connor's music on Bandcamp at weave.bandcamp.com. That's W-E-A-V. He made the song that you're listening to right now.
It's true, and the stuff I make on my own time is not quite video game music. It's like music, but check it out. Search Weave on Spotify as well. W-E-A-V.
And we appreciate your time one last time. We will see you next time. My name is Braden.
And I am Connor.
And this has been NintenGems. Have a good one.
Love you.